Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layouts, and today I'm here for the Always a Class Act School Hop hosted by Sarah Scraps. I pulled out the Simple Stories Here and There collection, as well as this sketch from Scrapbook Generation. It is a free sketch from the Sketch Support Series, sketch number 25. And I know what you're thinking. Lisa, that is a travel collection. What are you going to do for school with that? I really wanted to think outside the box for this layout. I've done the school hop with Sarah Scraps for several years now, and most of the time I usually end up doing Eli's back to school photos because it's that time of year. And honestly, I'm kind of caught up with those. So I didn't really have the option to use them this year. So I decided that I would look through the other school photos, and I'm actually going to do a multicultural night that his school hosted. I got this collection, I think, in one of the warehouse box sales, so it doesn't have a lot of paper with it. So I decided to look through my stash, and I pulled out several pieces of cardstock. I'm in love with the colors of this collection. The different shades of browns as well as the navy just work so well together. I did cut down this darker brown paper, and I didn't cut it the right direction because it does have a textured, so I had to use the back of it, which is okay. I really wish I could have used that textured, but I wasn't going to cut into another sheet. The sketch calls for an 8x10 on the left-hand side of the layout, and I used one of my Canva templates that I do have for sale, and it is linked below, to add 5 photos to the 8x10. I really enjoy using those Canva templates because I can get the collage with different size photos, as well as having that white border. I knew that the 4x4 photo that the sketch called for was going to overlap my 8x10 and cover up Eli a little bit, so I decided to pull out this striped paper and I cut a border on it, and then I'm going to add it to the left-hand side of the layout. This is going to give me a little bit more room so that I can make sure that my photos don't overlap anything important on the 8x10. I'm then going to go ahead and lay down all of the paper and the photos. Like I said, this was the literacy and multicultural night at Eli's school last year. I took the Facebook post and made that into a 4x4 for the left-hand side of the layout. Over on the right, the school offered a passport, and if he got a stamp from all of the booths at this event, then he got a free dress down day, so a day he didn't have to wear his uniform to school. So I took a picture of the front of the passport as well as the passport opened up with all of his stamps on it. And then over on the very far right-hand side is a selfie that I took of us at the event. Because this is more about him, I wanted to make sure that the larger photos just included him, but I did want to include myself on the layout as well. The 8x10 is just him trying a bunch of foods. It was a fun event where we were able to sample different foods from the countries that were represented by the staff and student population. For the very far right-hand side, it did call for the journaling, but I had already pre-printed my journaling, and I added a tag to the far right-hand side. I just had to cut it down just a little bit to make it fit into the space. I knew that I wanted the tag topper to stick out a little bit, but I also wanted the white part of it to be lined up with the photo. I then remembered that I wanted to add some stitching to the layout, so I did pull out my Tim Holtz ruler and just added a row around the outside edge. I did do my stitching offline, and I slowed the video down here so that you can see the detail of that stitching. The tone-on-tone look of this brown just really adds extra texture to the layout. The sketch does call for the stitching to go down the side next to the 8x10, but because I had that border strip already cut out, I decided not to do the stitching. I then pulled out this cut file from Cut to You. I will link her below. She has some amazing cut files in her collection, and this one is no different. I knew I wanted a large cut file because last year when I did this hop, I also did a cut file, and I felt like I could give a nod to that layout. For the backing, I looked through the 6x8 paper pad because I knew that I wanted to have a smaller print. I pulled out this navy as well as the striped and this cloud, but then I quickly realized that the navy wasn't going to work because I had cut out the cut file in a navy color as well. But the cloud paper was perfect for the word world. And then I used the stripe paper for the word traveler. For the globe, I knew that I wanted to do something different. So I went back to the 6x8 pad and I did find a map paper, but it just wasn't working. I also tried the polka dots as well as this other map paper in the blue, but I just didn't like any of it. I think that map paper would have worked if it didn't have the airplanes on it. I then turned to the 12x12 paper thinking maybe I could use one of the cards. None of that worked for me either. And I finally decided to pull out these Project Life cards that I've had forever. This is a pack of cards that just mainly contain grids or notebook paper. It's a great way to add journaling. I did decide to end up using this blue grid. I really like how that lighter blue on the grid paper contrasts with the navy from the cut file. I ran the paper back through my silhouette so I didn't have to fussy cut the letters. If you have a cut file, you can release the compound path and then remove the top layer and you will have the perfect layer of the letters for your cut file. Just make sure that you don't put it right against the edge like I did with the letter T and the globe. But it wasn't very much and it was super easy to cut it out. Now here's where I'm going to make a mistake. You see how I have that world traveler laid out and I make sure that I have enough space for it so that I can add the photos. But then I didn't think about it when I was adding that 4x4 photo down. I even moved the world traveler out of the way because it was in my way as I was putting the photos down. So I add all 3 of my photos as well as the tag to the far right-hand side of the layout. I trim down my photo and my tag to make sure that they were perfectly lined up. I'm going to get those down as well. Of course, I did have to pull out my hole punch so that I can add the tag hole to the tag itself. And I did have to trim down the photo just a little bit more to make sure that it fit properly over that tag. Of course, using my T-square ruler to make sure it's all straight. And then this is where I realized that I made the mistake. I went too high on my photos. It was pretty easy to pull up the right-hand side of the layout because I had just put the ATG down. The left-hand side is a little bit different because I did use some liquid adhesive. I did tear the paper a little bit and I'm going to cover that up with some embellishments. So I moved my cut file down a little bit and then laid my photos back down again so that they actually have enough room for the cut file. You can see here where I tore the paper just a little bit, but I'm going to end up adding some embellishments right to the top, so you're not even going to be able to tell. I cut out the circle so that I could add it behind my globe. I added just some liquid adhesive right to the back of the globe and then added the grid paper down. I decided that I'd go ahead and add some liquid adhesive directly to the cut file and get that cut file down to the layout. Now, I did use some liquid adhesive and it's definitely spilling over onto my cut file, but once I get the letters down, it covers up a majority of that liquid adhesive and I'm not too worried about it. Using the silhouette makes it so much easier to get these letters down and I do not like fussy cutting at all, so I am always going to opt for my silhouette if I can. I did have to cut out that T because it was too close to the edge, and then I did end up just tucking it behind the cut file to make sure that I didn't cut it too short because that would just be my luck. I then pulled out the embellishment pieces, and because this is a travel theme, I was pretty limited on what I could add. I really liked this globe, but it also said World Traveler, so I didn't want to add it because it kind of would clash with my title. I looked through the chipboard pieces as well as the sticker sheet, and I just wasn't liking any of it. I was really trying to focus on covering up that torn paper, and ultimately I did end up with this little flower. Because I cut it down and tucked it in, you don't even see that it is a flower. I really wanted to make this camera work. It just wasn't having it. So I decided to pull out the 6x8 paper pad, and there was a 3x4 card in there that said, "This is your passport to fun." And I really liked that saying. So I decided to go ahead and cut it out. And then I'm going to have to trim it down a little bit because I didn't want all of that bottom section as well as the top part. So I just trim it down enough that there's only a little bit left, and then I did pull out my notebook punch because this is a school layout, so I felt like that was appropriate. And then I'm going to tuck it in behind that Facebook post. Then I'm going to trim down that flower, and now you can't even see that mistake that I made where I tore the paper. I did go ahead and add some more liquid adhesive just to make sure that it stayed down. I pulled out that camera again. I really wanted to make this camera work. I tried it in multiple places, but I just couldn't make it work. I decided that I would go ahead and add my journaling to the layout. I did use the Hero Arts die. I have it linked below, as well as a video tutorial if you'd like to check it out. My journaling says, Eli's school hosted Literacy and Multicultural Night. We sampled foods and learned about the many countries represented by students and staff. Eli discovered the best way to travel the world was through his stomach, and he enjoyed every bite. Once I stacked my journaling strips, I went ahead and trimmed them down, and then I'm going to add them directly to the layout. I love the way that the journaling strips overlap my photo just a little bit, as well as that tag. Once I got my journaling strips down, I then pulled out some jute twine to add to the tag hole. I'm then going to add a glue dot so that my jute twine stays in place. I tried to make the sticker camera work on my layout, but it didn't. And then I found these two suitcases that were stacked on top of each other, and they fit perfectly right over the letter R, so I went ahead and added that. And then I found another floral piece to add over on the left-hand side. I tried to make this map and the coffee cup work over on the left earlier in the layout, but it actually fits really well next to the suitcases. I also found a geotag that had a little star, and then on the adhesive brads there was actually a passport, so I went ahead and added that right next to that saying that said, "This is your passport to fun." I really thought about adding the brads to the middle of the letters, like the R and the A, but I just wasn't liking the way that it looked. So I did end up adding a brad over on the right hand side as well as the left, and then I pulled out my Simple Stories enamel dots and added those around the layout as well. I also had these heart enamel shapes, and I added a yellow one to each one of the clusters as well. I then felt like there was some trapped space below that photo and above my journaling, so I did add a tag that said "Around the World," as well as a floral and a heart. I then added a floral to the upper right hand side, as well as a heart over on the left. I do want to encourage everyone to go check out the playlist listed below and see how everyone else interpreted Sarah Scrap's school hop this year. That is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I hope you are encouraged to get some of your school layouts done with this hop. Make sure you check out everyone that is listed below. If you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.